Where are we going this morning, Dr. Bell?
We're going to Georgia Tech and to continue our entrepreneurship training. And Georgia Tech has the best incubator, the second best in the United States, and one of the best in the world. So this is not just about theory, but this is about practical. And hopefully we'll be able to identify these models that fit Nigeria, and we can begin to improve the economic development in a very fast pace. Because Nigeria is supposed to be the giant of Africa. We're the largest economy in Africa right now, but we want to make sure that we sustain it. And in order to sustain it, we have to bring everybody along, especially the institutions of learning in Ireland. And I think that our participants are prepared, they're well trained, they're eager, they're well motivated, and I see no reason why we cannot achieve our objectives. So, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Today, okay. Because I got
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. How you doing?
No, what are we doing today?
Lovely. Very good. We're going to Georgia Tech. We're going to have a look at the incubation center, look at successes they have over there, and try and replicate it back in Nigeria. We hope it's going to be a lovely one, basically. We're looking forward to the experience.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
I understand that, good morning, everyone. We need you to mark us.
Yes, right.
Please mark us. Okay. Please don't forget your appraisal forms. Sanisa, your boy is loyal.
Thank you.
The boss himself.
So just in case, we're going on the second floor. Yeah, we're going to have different batches. So you guys make sure, I don't know yet, but when we get there, make sure that you're on the elevator. Can we get a quick group picture right here, please?
Don't. Oh, okay. Oh, thank you. At least.
Let me turn up this now.
It doesn't look so glamorous, but this is probably the best place to for us to all start. This is our this has been our community room for our smaller events. Our larger events are this room upstairs, but it's maybe 4 to 6 times the size of this room, and kind of has a little outdoor area for eating, so it's a little bit more formal. This room is kind of the epicenter of this second floor outside of all the company offices. And so what we're doing is we're turning this into all glass. We're removing all the walls behind it, and it's going to turn into one large kind of community area with seating in the lobby, glass doors that can be opened or closed, so depending on the size of the event. And then we're going to kind of reshape a lot of the lobby, cafeteria, and staff offices to allow for just a little more interactivity. So this is a fairly old office space. The ATDC is the Advanced Technology Development Center. It is a government-funded economic development project. This was run-down apartment complexes. And they said, hey, what can we do if we invest $100 million? What kind of change could we create? So, oh, you have it? Yeah, sure. So that was the impetus to this. So this facility is taxpayer funded, and it enables us to provide this resource to new technology startups. So with that being said, I'll go into a little bit more detail. But my name is Pete Santora. I started as an entrepreneur in residence, which I'll explain to you. But and now I'm a community catalyst here. A entrepreneur in residence is one of our really the thing that makes us the most unique. We bring in entrepreneurs who have started, raised capital, and sold their business, and put them on staff in order to help startups that fit their vertical. So if someone comes from software as a service and sales and marketing, or someone comes from advanced manufacturing, or someone comes from starting a healthcare IT company, and they then raise capital for that company, and then they sold that that company, they come with just a wealth of connections, and whether it's capital, whether it's additional customers. And so we bring them in here, they know the industry, and we tie them to one of the companies that also fits that vertical. So the Advanced Technology Development Center is an incubator that's designed to help startups launch and grow their businesses that are headquartered here in the state of Georgia. So if you're headquartered in North Carolina or Alabama or Florida, we aren't the group for you. But if you're headquartered here in Georgia, anywhere in Georgia, Savannah, Athens, Augusta, it doesn't matter, Valdosta, we'll support you. And the main things that we do for helping these entrepreneurs launch and grow companies here in Georgia is really four things. We provide coaching, which is the entrepreneurs in residence. So each company gets a dedicated entrepreneur in residence. They can call whenever they want. It's as Steven, our vice president, likes to say, it's for the things that you can't tell your board, for the things that because maybe they'll think they hired the wrong person. You can't tell your employees because then maybe they'll leave and go to another company. And you can't tell your wife because, well, she didn't want you to do it in the first place. So, so you could tell the entrepreneurs in residence, and they can help you work through whatever that situation is. So coaching is the first thing that we bring. Connections, so connections to Fortune 500 companies, directors of strategy, or CEOs, presidents, vice presidents come in to see what the latest and greatest thing is. And being that we're attached to Georgia Tech, we have a lot of research that comes out of Tech that we help commercialize. So they can always see things that could be really transformative for their business. They don't always know what they're looking for. They just come in and basically shop for new. And really our startups could be working on something for a particular group, and they see how it applies to something totally different that they're doing. So the kind of beforehand knowledge and everything being lined up beforehand, that doesn't really happen here. Sometimes things are in flux. So coaching, connections, capital. So all entrepreneurs and residents have raised money in their area, so they all have capital connections. And community. So we're all in the same space together. So the CEOs are having CEO roundtables. They get together once a week to talk about any issues that are coming up. And then the final thing we provide is campus. So we provide access to Georgia Tech's engineering talent. So for all the companies that are that are looking for new developer talent, Georgia Tech's a great place to be located next to. So that being said, the quick structure, first of all, does anyone want to hear more, or are you guys okay and you just want to take a walk around?
Well, before we do a tour, how many companies are in this building, and can you talk a bit about like the lean startup that's being taught to the companies and customer discovery?
Sure.
That kind of thing?
Okay. Do you guys want to hear that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Which do you want to hear about lean startup, or you want to hear about the customer discovery piece, or you want to hear about
Both. Everything. Everything.
All right,
Everything
all right,
and
that's
more.
what I'm talking about. I thought I was putting you to sleep, so I'm just going to take a step back. All right.
Before Pete gets into that, everyone, I didn't get a chance to introduce myself. My name is Brian C. Kanchana. I'm an Atlanta native. I graduated from Georgia Tech. My degree is in biomedical engineering, and I had the great fortune as a student to participate in a number of startup companies, many of which were based on research here at the university. Some of the research I worked with was modifying a bronchoscope to be used with quantum dots that can tag the cancerous cells to help surgeons know where to cut when trying to remove a tumor. I've been a member of ATDC. My startup company has been a member of ATDC for over 3 years now. And it's a great benefit because they have structured classes for many students thinking about entrepreneurship as a possible track. And then as Pete said, in addition to the book knowledge, they do a great job of connecting and partnering each student with experienced entrepreneurs who have office hours you can meet with on a regular basis. So they help expose you to what it is to be like to be an entrepreneur. They provide classes around that. They have their business competitions in the School of Management, which many of the ATDC companies came out of. And then if you do well and you're a good student in their class and you make traction as a general level participant in the incubator, you have the opportunity to rise up to a level of higher distinction within the incubator called ATDC Select. And there are now a few other different levels within ATDC, but if you're a select company, beyond the book knowledge and beyond the individual mentor, they have people on staff within the incubator to help you close your first deals for your company, to really help you accelerate your growth. And I don't know what the number is now, but last time I heard about these select companies, they had over an 85% success rate of later growing to some certain size where they could be acquired or had some certain measure of success. So thinking about the failure rate among startups in general, 85% is really mind-blowing for me. And actually, I am still a general member at that level, and I just hope to be at the select status in the near future, thanks to individuals like entrepreneurs and residents like Pete here.
Yeah, so we had this select level. It's now called Signature, but we had this level, and that's all we used to do. We just bring in the best companies in Georgia, and we'd protect them. We'd house them, and now what we've seen is, in order to make the community successful, we need a way to graduate people up a ladder to get. Not everyone just comes in at an amazing company. So we've created kind of a tiered program. We have community. It's called Educate. So anyone who wants to sign up can be a part, and they can access classes like customer discovery, which I'll come back to. And then once you've kind of found some type of nugget, some type of insight that you think you could turn into a real business, we put you in a category called Accelerate. And Accelerate gives you more access to us, to Georgia Tech's campus, to investor connections. And then once you start to get that product market fit, which is the traction, you bring customers on, you start to say, okay, yeah, I really have hit a sweet spot. Then we're looking at putting you in Signature. So that's the route that it goes. And so customer discovery is the first class. We have customer discovery, financial literacy, and investor readiness. Those are the three classes of Educate. And customer discovery is something that I teach, but it's a 7-week lab. And what we do is we help customers understand no one wants your product. No one wants what you're doing. No one thinks what you're doing is important until it is important. And so if you go out, if you take your idea out to the real world and talk to a customer, there's a couple things that could happen. One is you could find out that it's a terrible idea right away, right? You talk to them and they just say, no, there's no, I couldn't use that. Great, you found that out, you can move on. The second thing is they tell you it's a great idea. That's a great idea. Well, that's worse. That's worse than them telling you it's a bad idea. Because now you're thinking, ha 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 ha, I got it. I got it. I just need to spend a whole bunch of money. I just need to build a company. I just need to add people. I need to build. And so what ends up happening is too often we listen to customers, and honestly, customers don't know any more about the problem than you do. So if you don't know more about the problem than the customer does, you're already at a loss. So what we try and do is, rather than get people to go out and do customer discovery or sales, we have them go out and figure out, how can customers avoid this product? I mean, they do the same thing every day. They do the things they've always done. You're going to tell me you're going to bring something new into the world and they're just going to change their behaviors? I think everyone in here, we probably all have some behaviors, some rituals that we do every single day, all the time. You may take the same way to work. All of a sudden someone tells you, hey, I got a new route. I want to take you down the new route. You just go the same way to work. How is it that suddenly you're going to start switching and now using this person's tool? So what we do in customer discovery is we help them to understand that what the customer is saying is not always the most important thing. It's more about observing what they actually do. What do they do, and how can they avoid or not avoid your idea, your product, your service, whatever that is. And so that can be that requires some mentorship to guide them through that process. So what we have them do is every week we have them go out and do 10+ interviews. We have them bring the interviews back, and we literally have them tell us exactly what the people said. What did you say to them? What did they say back? What did you say to them? What did they say back? And then we help them interpret what that customer was actually saying. Well, the customer said this, but what we actually are seeing them doing is they're doing something totally different. So if you just go out there and build to what they're saying, what happens is you build a product, you deliver it to them, and when you deliver it, they say, yeah, that's great. I think what we could do, though, is we could add this on, right? And then for software engineers, what ends up happening is they just keep adding features. And they think it's a feature race. And they're like, oh, well, I just didn't need to add this feature. And I just need to add this feature. And then what ends up happening is they go back to the customer, and the customer says, oh, well, that's really good, too. I like that. But we just need to get this in there. And so then they go back and they build that. And it's like just terrible. It's this death spiral down. And all of a sudden, 2 years later, your wife is slapping you across the face. I told you this wasn't a good idea. You're, coding even more feverishly. And then even if it worked, you have this enormous product that you're trying to support. And you have like $10 in your bank account. So all of that being said, we try and eliminate that process by doing one of two things. Either killing it, or finding at least one nugget, like one little thing that we think is actually true, that the customer actually, a moment in time that a customer is actually stuck and experiencing some type of loss. And if we can do that, then it's on to the next stage, and hopefully we can support the entrepreneur as they go. So, any questions about that?
Well, to make one comment about that process, at the beginning of this year, our startup, Work Ready Grab, received a National Science Foundation grant for their Innovation Core program. And as a part of that, we had to do over 100 of these customer discovery interviews that Pete is talking about in a two-month period. It was very intense. A lot of faculty were involved in this process, and as some of y'all may know, some faculty really just enjoyed their academic work, and they're not so interested they're interested in the idea generation, and not so much in the implementation, the translation of that idea into the economy. And so it led to some interesting experiences for this Innovation Core program to involve the entrepreneur and the originating faculty member behind the idea to both participate in these interviews. And what was success in this program was, success didn't mean you did these 100 interviews and all of a sudden you have more orders than you can fill. That's one type of success. But another type of success, which was a shock to many people in the program, was if you did these interviews as was prescribed and you decided your company was a no-go. And that was kind of a different way to view entrepreneurship than many people were accustomed to, because typically we think, no, you always push, you keep going until you cannot anymore. But the idea of these customer interviews was that if you can do these 100 interviews, talk to 100 potential customers, and decide this is not a good fit, that I should then move on to something else, then that is a success. Because if you're able to stop one direction after 2 months and then move on to the next good idea, then that is going to save you much more time and allow you to be much more productive, and, as you move forward, than if you had pushed for 2 years instead of 2 months on this idea that doesn't have a good fit for your audience. So success could be it takes off, you pivot in another direction, or you decide it's a no-go. But the beauty of the structure that's being taught in ATDC in this Innovation Core program is that it forces the entrepreneur to go out instead of just talking to your friends or your co-collaborators on the technology, to go out into the market and figure out, does this really belong here? Will people, not only do they say they like it, but will they pay for it? What is the revenue source? And then, how do I move forward? Should I move forward? So that's certainly new. That was, when I was a student here, that really wasn't available. So the customer discovery lean startup really has only started to take off at Tech in the last 4 years or so. I graduated in 2008, so after I had graduated, and there's a whole lot of hubs of entrepreneurship around campus, not just here. There's obviously a lot here. This is our incubator, but increasingly many departments even are instituting programs at the department level to have startup competitions or find ways to help students think about how do you translate what we're teaching you into its applications outside the university.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not supposed to ask any questions, I'm staff. But I was just wondering, how much does it cost to start the program?
It's $10 million,
I can
but
afford that.
the check is direct for, no. It's, to be a community, to be the educate level, it's
Yes, that's what
$25 per quarter.
For a course?
Yeah, per
How many
quarter.
Per quarter.
It's
$3 months.
a year.
Okay, for
3 months. Yes.
Okay, so, and are there a limited amount of spots?
At the educate level, no,
Okay.
unlimited.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we have close to 900 companies in the educate level.
Oh, okay, awesome. Thank you.
We have, I think we're at right around 50 companies for Accelerate. We just opened it several weeks ago.
Right.
So I think that will probably go to, at the end of the year, we'll probably be close to about 100, and we'll probably stop it at that point. And then Signature, we don't have necessarily a top to it, but it's, I think we're at 35 companies right now, and somehow we always seem to be at that 40, 45 range for companies.
Awesome, thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
And only the select companies are physically in the building, so for
Signature.
Signature, right. So if the Signature companies want office space, obviously that will be more than $25 in a quarter.
Yeah, okay.
That's
awesome.
just
I'll do
membership.
that.
Yes.
How much is it on the other levels, the other two levels?
Yeah, so the Accelerate's $100 a quarter, and then Signature is $500 a quarter, and then if you have office space, the office space is, I'm not exactly sure it's subsidized, but it's around $18 a square foot for Class A, which, probably is $36 or something like that, $32 a square foot.
The companies go from one level into an upper level. Do you evaluate that to determine
We
what?
evaluate, but not necessarily. Ideally, you want to educate, accelerate, signature, but some just go right into signature, some go and accelerate and just never move on. But our percentage, what we say is 90% of companies that graduate signature go on to be a going concern or sold within 5 years. So 5 years after they graduate, they're a success. So we have a pretty high, we have a very, very high kind of success number once they graduate the program. I would say probably 60% of companies graduate the signature program, it may be a little bit higher, but that would, unofficially, we don't track that, but that's what I would think. Yeah.
I would want us to delve a little bit into universities' scenarios right now. We have university executives and presidents here. How can the universities replicate this? And what would be the incentives for them to replicate this back in Nigeria? I want you to go into figures and statistics of what your success stories are, what are the incentives for the organization or for the group that set up all of this. Apart from the rent you take quarterly and all of that, what do these success stories actually remember their history? Do they remember that they came out of here and became successful from here? Do they actually feed back the community? Do they do donations back to the community? What has been the success stories? What is the profit for them? What's the drive at the end of the day?
Sure. So I think there's a lot of different ways to do this type of model. The way that we do this model is job creation. That's our primary lever of success. The way we had been measuring job creation in the past, because it's these startups, and is we were looking at more than $2 billion worth of investment that these companies have attracted. Wow. We were looking at more than I think we were doing 25 million in contracts signed. Wow. We were just while they're here, and then we are looking at just exits. So if you Earthlink, one of the first internet service providers. Recently, we had AirWatch, which is another telecom kind of security, mobile device security company. So we measure it in terms of the two types of companies that we're looking at Signature, which really goes back into reporting statistics is, can we find companies that are building net new technology, so hardware, sensors, something didn't exist? Can we commercialize IP out of Georgia Tech? And then second, are there any market disrupting companies? So you could be software, but how is this company changing the landscape? So those are the two types of companies that we're looking for Signature, and those companies have led to these statistics around more than 2 billion raised, and I don't know the job numbers. I didn't prepare my statistics for you guys, but I will say what ended up happening here in the state of Georgia is we were focused really on Atlanta and putting $100 million initial investment, and over 3 years to see that $100 million investment grow in terms of capital being put into businesses, jobs created. Obviously, this parcel of land changing its value. I think that we saw a great success in this location, and then we started to see local municipalities, local governments, city governments saying, "Hey, I want that kind of knowledge worker in my town too. How do I make that happen?" And so now you're seeing out smaller cities from outside and say, "Hey, what assets do we have? Let's take a look at whether or not an incubator even makes sense." And so we have a group upstairs that actually comes in and does a feasibility study. They look at your assets, they look at how people would raise money, they look at what you can do, and they say go, no go, scorecard on whether it makes sense, and if so, kind of a SWOT analysis. Here's your strengths, here's your weaknesses, and each one of these is doing it because it's changing the dynamic of their town. It's adding to energy. It's keeping knowledge workers close to home. Changing the real estate landscape. Obviously it's adding jobs. It's adding taxpayers back into the economy. So I think that's what everyone's looking at. So the state of Georgia has looked at us and said, "Hey, you guys, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. You're already doing this really well. Why don't you take this to the other cities?" And so that's really what's expanded our reach. taking what we've been doing here at ATDC in Atlanta and then moving it to cities like Athens and Augusta and Savannah and Gwinnett and Cobb and Marietta. So
I found out that the room across from the elevators with chairs is available for us to use. They said the front desk that's fine. So can we move everyone over into that room?
sure, what I'm going to do right now. Are there any other questions?
Yeah. What time is that?
What's that?
What time is that?
To 5.
Which time zone?
That is, I think that's on the Nigerian clock. Isn't it? I set that up for you guys so you can feel more comfortable.
Amazing.
Yeah, so what I thought we'd do is just, I'm just going to show you the design lab next door, and then we can go back to the room, and if you guys have questions at that point. So let me just tell you what I'm going to show you real quick. We have in the two categories of market disruption and net new technology. Market disruption is mostly software companies, how we're classifying it. Software companies can write code quickly and they have a lot of benefits. The cost of writing code has come down dramatically. But for net new technology, hardware, sensors, not so much. So you still have physical hardware, usually software that's also there, maybe some type of embedded design. So what we've done is, in order to speed that process up, we've created a design studio, which is a rapid prototyping studio. And so I'm going to show you that, some of the things we have, 3D printer. I'll just walk you by the outside of the room, and then we'll do a lap around, and I'll kind of point out some of the companies and tell you what they do. Okay? And if everyone could just kind of stay together, it'll make it go a little quicker, I think.
Sorry, man, it's a cocktail launch lecture.
I stepped out when he answered your question.
Amazing, yes, he did. Yes, I have just one more question. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if he told you the number because I stepped out, but the amount of economic development in the South is incredible as a result of the company.
And that's, I want you to brother on that to get seated. Just brother on that. Do
So we can, once you've seen it, maybe you can just keep walking down. Just look at the little window seal as you go. You'll see the little plastic shells, the chips that are embedded in it. And I'll just give you a quick. So yeah, so the lab has a number of machines for rapid prototyping. The most interesting probably is the 3D printer. But most of our companies, what they're trying to figure out is how is a hardware piece going to look, and how is it going to contain maybe a chip or some type of embedded device, and how does that fit inside of the rest of the devices that they have or hardware that they have. And so it becomes critical to produce these pieces as fast as possible and to find the designs that don't work. So the faster they can find the designs that don't work, the faster they can get to the designs that do work. And one company that's a great example of this, as we walk down on the right, we're going to go to, are you guys trying to get by?
That's all right, I'm just listening.
Okay. One of the companies that we're going to go down and see on the end is a robotic bartender. And so it's a machine about this tall that you can pick your drink. Has anyone used the freestyle machine, the Coca-Cola freestyle machine?
Yes.
Where you get to pick your Coke or your Sprite okay. So it's like freestyle for liquor. Yeah, right, we're gonna have a little party afterwards. No, I'm just kidding.
It's
So,
inventive.
yes, and so there's some great applications for it where at ballparks or in hotels where maybe they can't put a bartender in some of the like suites and the boxes, they can now put this type of vending machine there.
So they did for the premium suites at the Kentucky Derby. And what it does is it takes a fingerprint of
Far
all the
better,
systems.
far better.
So above us are speakers, and there's wireless networks and routers that are in, and so it's mapping all of the systems above and creates a fingerprint, and what it then does is creates indoor maps. So whenever you're walking through a hospital, if you pull up your phone, if you pull up their app, it knows exactly where you are, and it can tell you where the doctor's office is that you need to. What's that?
You don't need to ask anybody.
No, you don't need to ask anyone. It's like Google Maps for inside of large buildings. Yeah. I just looked on our website. There's a couple of statistics, maybe, that you guys. So we started in 1987. We've had 150 graduates, collectively raised more than $2 billion in capital. 2013, we had our companies raise $50 million in capital, and 48% of the ATDC Signature graduates have been acquired, what we consider successfully acquired. 1% of our companies have completed a successful IPO, 3% have profitably merged with another company, and 44% have been profitably acquired. So just kind of gives you a rundown. A lot of the companies are still operating. A lot of them have built long-lasting companies. We did an alumni event a month or two ago, and I couldn't believe how many were just in operations. Just they didn't have any plans to do anything else. So, did you guys enjoy the tour? Was that okay? Okay. What questions do you have, or what did I not cover, or what can I help you with? Yes.
Sorry. The last machine you showed of the device that detects contaminant.
Yeah.
Is it restricted to only chemicals or any contaminant at all?
They have a very broad range of. They can put almost anything on their chips, and they're like litmus test chips. You know that any chemical that has a reactant, they can do airborne or liquid. So they have a wide range of stuff. They're focusing on just a few to start because of the R&D that goes into each different chemical or contaminant, but it's a wide range. Yep.
Yeah, we have some president of universities that are here with us.
Yeah.
From different colleges in Nigeria.
Okay.
And their most interest is the collaboration with Georgia Tech in terms of how they can apply what you're doing here.
Yeah.
In their various institutions.
Yeah. Great.
And what form of collaboration do you have a program that they can emulate without starting from scratch, so that the partnership or the process is faster and they can begin as soon as possible. You know, they are, I think the vice president, and one of the things we want to make sure that there is action on the ground before they even land to get to Nigeria.
Yeah.
So that's how excited it is, and that's how quick that we want to be able to form this relationship with Georgia Tech.
Yeah. Well, obviously, universities are a great place to put these because of all the talent and creativity, and basically before they have a life. So before the risk of taking on some of these projects becomes too much. Although I will say, in the state of Georgia, the average age for an entrepreneur is 44. So it's interesting that even though we have all of this new generation of entrepreneurs, the 44 is still the kind of magic number for the wisdom to start a company. That being said, what we have here in order to enable universities to do this is we have a couple groups.
We have one group that does feasibility studies, like what your assets, SWOT analysis. They work a lot with governments and municipalities. It's typically who they work with. For the university systems, we have two groups. We have ATDC, who has our programming track record, and then we have a group that came out of ATDC called Venture Lab. Venture Lab, one of the really crazy hard things here that Brian alluded to is commercializing IP out of universities is extremely difficult. It's not something that just happens. Someone comes up with a great research thing and then just turns it into a business. It's very difficult. One of the biggest issues is the mindset that needs to change between a researcher and an entrepreneur. So you can research and come up with something, but to be an entrepreneur is something very different. And so our professors in particular struggle with a lot of that. If you're a person who raises money just to like get into the science, and now you need to be a person who takes things to customers and needs to maximize profit and needs to only do what they need to do. It's two very different sets of people. So we have a group called Venture Lab, which goes into universities. They do it here. Their focus is on Georgia Tech professors and students, and helps them start the commercialization process of how to get intellectual property out. It also does a lot of the initial kind of education for universities, what programs you should have, what that should look like. And then ATDC really comes in at the commercialization level. So then once that kind of has been, that something has been created, ATDC helps turn that into a real business. So I know Venture Lab is actually going to universities around the world and teaching this. I know they've been over to France. I know they go to Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. So, and obviously go to a lot of the universities here in the U.S. We're doing something next week up in Georgia. So Venture Lab has got a program, and you can get the program from them, and ATDC has a program, and you can get the program from us. So we're more than willing to participate in those things. Okay.
How is the ATDC funded?
ATDC is funded through taxpayer dollars. So state of Georgia, we're on the budget for the state of Georgia, and we've recently been given more budget in order to expand the effort from the Atlanta area to the entire state. So we've always been about companies headquartered in Georgia, but the focal point has always been Atlanta. And now we're kind of creating a more of a hub and spoke where Atlanta is still the center, but we can get to Athens, we can get to Augusta, we can get to Savannah, and we can start helping those companies. And then if they need Atlanta resources, we can bring them back.
What are the deliverables for that funding?
The deliverables for that funding are get me jobs.
And to that point, I was looking up some statistics, and I found that the companies that have come through here have generated, it says, over 50,000 man-years of employment, generated over $12.7 billion in revenue amongst themselves, and generated over $100 million in profit back to Georgia through the taxes that many of these businesses are paying. And that because of ATDC and the connection to investors that this incubator helps bring, they've raised over $1 billion in venture capital for the emerging companies in Georgia, or at least in the Southeast. Those are some of the numbers that have resulted. So yes, the state is supporting this incubator, but also money ends up going back into the taxpayers.
So I want you to tell us categorically, right, how is the government seeing the importance of your institutions? How have you grown relevance by affecting the economy of Georgia, the economy of Georgia as a whole, or Atlanta as a whole, and what was the first reaction of the government when you started, and how has that grown differently now that you're making an impact in the society?
Well, this when you say first, this started over 30 years ago.
Amazing.
I'm 29. But with that being said,
I don't know that we. I'm 31. So I'm older than no. I don't know that I have all the statistics around that. What I can tell you is that it started small. Right? We started with some very high-level technology startups that needed some basic things, and we were working with kind of a blighted plot. Right? We were working with a downtrodden kind of plot that we wanted to renovate. I can say that recently this has become a major push by not only the state but all the local municipalities. So this has been a place where, other cities, other universities don't necessarily want Atlanta or Georgia Tech coming into their backyard, right? I mean, you go to UGA and they're not like dying to have Georgia Tech just, come in and start buzzing around their dog. So what's interesting about this, though, is that because of the expertise in technology and high-tech technology, they do want that. They do want that transfer of knowledge, and they're willing to add their own assets to the table and bring their own things. But there is this desire for this expertise in high tech and how that can be brought to a community. So I do think that people are not only taking notice of how successful this has been in the past, how successful we are today with this, but how our success can transfer to their local communities for the future. And I say that because I base it off of observing demand. I mean, I base it off of them coming to us and saying, "Hey, could you come to Gwinnett? Could you come to UGA? Could you come to Augusta? Could you show us how to do this thing?" There's a new innovation park in Greenville. Same thing. They all came down there. They're like, "Hey, we've been seeing what you guys are doing. We want to know." So yeah. So if I just observe what is happening, there seems to be a lot of demand for what we're doing.
One note I should add is that what's really interesting are the opportunities for what maybe you can call cross-pollination. In that, yes, there's a lot of great engineering research taking place here, but what happens oftentimes in the business plan competitions is that the non-engineering students, they will actually look at the university as a buffet line of food, in a sense, for economic opportunities. And they will identify the professors with the most promising research. And then they will ask the professors, as I did, "Can I write a business plan around your research?" And they've always said, "Yes, sure, go for it." And then they compete and hopefully win and raise money and start a real company. And one other anecdote I can give is that a few months ago, I was over in the AUC in Atlanta, the Atlanta University Center, that includes Morehouse, Spelman, and Clark Atlanta. And a professor was telling me that sometimes when we want to launch innovative technology companies, one thing we found is that the technology doesn't necessarily have to come from my university. Even things as simple as, without even having to step foot on Georgia Tech's campus, have you all heard of Google Scholar before? You can search for promising articles in a certain industry, and they would use Google Scholar in addition to attending conferences to find the research, and then they write the business around the research. So my point is that if you feel you want to create a technology company, but maybe there's not as much hardcore science taking place in your own university, that doesn't necessarily limit you. There's still methods in place that have been working for other universities to partner with, stronger research beds to create opportunities for entrepreneurship for their students.
Do you receive NSF funding, or NSF funding goes to tech professors and then you leverage that? How does that work?
Yeah, so we don't, ATDC doesn't funnel any monies really. So the NSF funding is going to
to the group that's put together the proposal, to the company that's establishing the research and developing the research. What we do is we have a person on staff to help them maneuver the grant process. Yeah, so does that answer your question? Yeah.
Now, in the area of entrepreneurship, in Nigeria, we delve towards craftsmanship, tailoring, carpentry, photography, such kind of crafts that lead into entrepreneurship. I want you to tell us how high-tech, how investing in high-tech in the area of entrepreneurship would give a broader perspective, would give networking, would take away the barriers of connectivity for these universities. The idea is to make us understand the importance of investing in high-tech in these universities. What would be your take?
I don't know. That's above my pay grade, to tell you the truth. I'm a tech entrepreneur. That's all I've really known. So let me say that, you know, Savannah, we have a lot of craft entrepreneurs in Savannah, right? So a lot of design, a lot of handwork, a lot of sculpting, a lot of carving. No, those aren't high tech. Those aren't high tech startups. I would think some people may not even call those startups. They just call them small business entrepreneurs.
Exactly.
Right. So I think that those, yeah. So those are important to a community. Those are important to a culture. Those are important to so many things. But I think the benefit of you know, and it's interesting, in those businesses, if they get big, they probably employ way more jobs than a high-tech startup. A high-tech startup, you know, we look at a lot of our high-tech startups and they may not employ that many jobs, really, right? I mean, 30 jobs really isn't even that big of a deal. But I think what's interesting about the high-tech startup world is that if you can develop, if you build those like basic skills, you can compete with anyone almost right away, right? So I mean, there's no the barriers to entry in terms of just scale are removed. You can be anywhere in the world as long as you have access to internet. You can create the next Facebook. You can create the next billion-dollar company. That, if for a small business entrepreneur, they don't have that access to scale. And as tech entrepreneurs, we didn't have that access to that scale initially either. I mean, most companies pitched a deck to raise capital first, before they bought all the servers, before they hired all the engineers, before they did all of that. So now that that's not in the way, small business entrepreneurs still have all that stuff in their way, right? They still have to kind of sell the first 20 before they can get to the next 20. They still face those inventory issues. They still face well, I'm only one person. I need, you know, how does that scale? You know, I got to hire another one of me. I can't be in 20 places at one time. So the dynamics to the business are very different. And so I think as communities and as municipalities and as governments, we know what, for the long term, the benefit is around scale. The ability to have scale, to have a lever for your economy, that's just of critical importance. And I think while we need the small business entrepreneurs, they don't necessarily. And there's been great companies, like we have Cabbage here who provides microfinancing, right? So they're adding kind of a little bit of a scale function to the financing piece, but there's still so many other blocks in the way for them. So I think that high tech, the beauty of it is that you can compete instantly. And we used to always joke that, you know, if you went to someone's website, like you had no idea if they were a startup or they had been in business for. It's almost flipped now. Like if they have a crappy website, if they have a bad website, then
they probably have been around for a long time. If they have a really good website,
Yeah,
maybe
because
they're
like-
like brand new.
True.
You know, because it used to be if they had a bad website, oh, who are these guys? You know, if they had a good website, oh, this is the. But that was a kid behind the good one. So, so I think that's interesting. But but yeah, so it's like instantly you receive this credibility on the web, and I think now instantly you can build these real companies with very low barriers.
If I can add to that conversation, on the topic of global competitiveness and why to invest in innovation and in accelerators like this, Georgia Tech's past president, Wayne Clough, used to be on a committee. It was the National Innovation Committee. It was him, the CEO of IBM, a bunch of CEOs from major companies were part of this. And they were trying to figure out how do we enable America to remain globally competitive and innovative, you know, in this global landscape. And what they came up with is when you're talking about our labor, you don't win in global competitiveness by cheaper labor than China or cheaper labor than India. That's not how you win in global competitiveness. How you win is by creating a culture of innovation. You know, a structure behind innovation, because you want to create that next Facebook or the next technology that the world needs for some process. So in other words, to remain globally competitive is these types of programs and this type of infrastructure that is critically important for your country to remain globally competitive. Yeah. And then with that, we have time for one more question, or that's it? Okay.
Thanks a
All
lot.
right, thanks. Great meeting you guys. Okay, thanks a lot. Absolutely.
So we are going to the next phase of our program. South, I think I've always been around women entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general. I don't think we were calling them that. As someone said before, entrepreneur used to be a bad word. It was really somebody who couldn't find a job, who couldn't be employed somewhere else. And now it is the buzzword. But I mean, as a little girl, we sold candy in magazines and things like that. We didn't call it entrepreneurship. Some of us called it being resourceful, and other people just called it hustling. But it's something that we've done globally. And it is certainly something that is not new to the African continent. You know, I would tell people I lived extensively in Senegal and Guinea for a couple of years, traveled around the continent. And I told somebody one day, going from downtown to my apartment, which is in Midtown in Dakar, I could literally buy everything, including the kitchen sink. I mean, I purchased my carpets, I furnished my apartment. I probably could have even had my yearly physical while I was in the taxi on my way. And so we know that an entrepreneurial spirit is very much alive on the African continent. I worked with Oxfam when I was in Africa, and so I traveled quite a bit. And more than once, I was on a plane with a woman, and we would speak either in English or French or figure it out. And I said, well, where are you going? And on more than one occasion, the woman I was speaking to was either going to China or India. And I said, well, do you speak Chinese or do you speak Hindi or Hindu? Or she said, no, but I speak English and we make it happen. Well, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to buy some goods and I'm going to bring it back to my shop. And you know, she was creating industry. So she was actually going to figure it out, bring back goods, because even if she didn't speak a word of Mandarin, I think they knew how to count, and they understood the value of a dollar. She was bringing back and creating industry in her community. What's very interesting about that, too, is that it was nothing new. And as an American and talking to other Americans about this, I think, we realize more and more that women are very much a part of the enterprising fabric of the African continent. So in general, when we're looking at entrepreneurship and women and what's going on globally, you know, we're seeing a slowdown in certain economies. Certainly we're seeing that some of the fastest growing economies are on the African continent. As someone said once, this was actually last year when I was in Nigeria, there was a gentleman who was addressing a group of women business leaders, and he says, you know, Africans can be, you know, quote scripture, be very prophetic, and there are proverbs coming out the yin-yang. But, you know, he spoke over the audience. He said, you know, there's a threefold blessing over Africa. And he said, it's Africa, it's women, and it's youth. Young African women are leading in terms of entrepreneurial ventures on the continent. And we see that coming out in so many ways.
if we look at female entrepreneurship globally, it is certainly rising. Atlanta was ranked I think it's the #1 place in terms of the fastest growth of women entrepreneurs in the United States. So you're in good company here in Atlanta. But as we look at the continent of Africa, we're seeing a lot of growth in terms of a quick, rapidly rising middle class, and also what's going on in terms of the use of technology. And when we look at the emerging markets and then all of that together, of course, with the world's youngest population, we see that there's a lot of opportunity that's happening on the continent. So please forgive me, I'm skipping through these slides. The World Bank, of course, reports, and I'm sure you know this information, as even the economy is slowing down, the global economy, there's still at least 5% growth on average that's expected to take place. And women are going to be seen as the key drivers of economic growth. You know, we see women in just about, well, I'd say many industries, probably not so much your hard industrial industries, just from a traditional standpoint, but you're certainly seeing that more and more. Now, in terms of African growth and female entrepreneurship, they're very active in the labor market. This is, of course, according to World Bank data, but also probably what you've noticed as well. Women doing business in ways that support families include so many areas. Traders, women selling used clothes, hairstylists, and we see this even you know, in the United States and the rest of the world. What was interesting when I was doing some of the research in terms of female entrepreneurs in Nigeria, and we've had quite a few who've come through here, is when we look at some of the barriers, I think that they're typical barriers that exist everywhere. But one bit of research I read said that Nigerian women entrepreneurs seem to perceive themselves as dynamic enough to balance family, professional careers, and do better than their counterparts in Western societies. So, you know, I tested this notion. We had a group of women who came, I can't remember the name of the group, but it's a consortium of women who were actually involved in mining and trading. And so I asked, you know, what are some of the barriers of being a woman entrepreneur, and how do you work out balancing family and work? And she, you know, said it straight. She says, in Nigeria, we have our whole family that comes together. I said, okay, I get it. And she says, we work together, we value the family, you can call in your auntie. And those types of systems really do come into place, and they're very important for female entrepreneurs. Because when we're looking at your typical barriers, access to cash and finance, it is very important to look at a specific barrier, or I'd say a challenge, or something a woman has to deal with. They are typically the caregivers in the family, not just for their children, but also other members of the family. And these are some of the things that weigh on women entrepreneurs that I think more and more institutions are looking at in terms of thinking about how to support women entrepreneurs. Now, 11 trends. This is something that I stumbled upon recently from the website Lionesses of Africa. This is actually a group that we're working with to select some women entrepreneurs for a program I'll tell you about in a minute. 11 trends shaping women's entrepreneurship in Africa. Gender busting. So part of that is women going into traditionally male-dominated fields like construction, security work, those types of things. Number 2, going global. These women are creating global brands. I don't know if you all have heard of Soul Rebels in Ethiopia. They've actually, one woman founded the brand using spare, thrown away parts, and from there she actually has created this amazing shoe industry that's exporting globally. Women funding women, that's certainly a challenge for women entrepreneurs. Where are the angel investors? People are typically used to either giving to men, giving to a stronger startup. And I think this is probably a global phenomenon, but certainly in the United States. When we tend to think of entrepreneur, we're thinking of maybe a young guy, you know, behind a computer. We're thinking technology, and we're probably thinking of a white male, certainly not a woman of color who is funding other women. The rise of the micro multinational. Women who are leveraging technology and e-commerce. I think someone asked a question earlier about where does the technology come in terms of what women are doing, and they're certainly leveraging that. As the young man who spoke before me said, you know, you could be a startup with 2 or 3 people and really have global presence very rapidly. Pop-up retails. This is another trend that's happening with women. Women who, instead of having your traditionally what we call brick and mortar shops that cost a lot of money, a lot of capital, Women are taking fashion or whatever it may be, and they're going to certain events and they're selling their wares or they're selling their services. Collaboration, and this is something I think women tend to do well, working with other groups. There was this one example given of a woman-owned business in South Africa. They actually process oil, and they've worked with other groups to create a collection of luxury brands in order to support each other's creations. Afro-Lux is another thing. I certainly saw a lot of this in Nigeria, creating high-end brands, be they clothes, accessories, or whatever. We're certainly seeing the emergence of this. Game-changing women in tech, really focusing on the innovation, and this is back to what I was referring to earlier about the micro multinational. The 10th one was high-impact social change makers, and I think typically when we're talking about women entrepreneurs in developing countries, you know, we sometimes separate social entrepreneur from entrepreneur. Typically, I think when we're looking at women entrepreneurs in general, and then more specifically in emerging regions, they tend to be social entrepreneurs, solving a social problem, employing many people, and all of that being related. I know there's one example of that. There's several in Nigeria, but I know one of them was WeCyclers, which is in Lagos. When I visited last year, we went to the Co-Creation Hub in Lagos, Nigeria, and just met so many social entrepreneurs who are actually doing things, of course making money, but creating social change. And then the last point, and this is to the question that was asked earlier, the crafty entrepreneurs. And so you've got a lot of makers, women who are making arts and crafts, but using platforms like Etsy and other digital platforms to sell their wares globally. So they're working in collectives, but also doing this. So I think we sort of know what some of the general challenges are. It's the lack of access to capital, even policies, even marketing and certain strategies. In some areas, women are having trouble, particularly in the rural areas. You see a lot more problems. You may have issues of literacy, women who cannot own land, women who can't even get their product to market. And so those are some real barriers. Working through Africa Atlanta, and I'll just talk about that very generally. Africa Atlanta, it was Africa Atlanta 2014. It was actually an occasion that the dean of the Ivan Allen College of Liberal Arts had to bring an art collection over from the Royal Museum for Central Africa in Belgium. It was focused on the Congo region of Africa, and it was touring the United States. We lobbied and were actually able to get the exhibition to come to Atlanta and assumed that we would have a couple of weeks of programming around it. Maybe a conference or two in addition to the exhibition that was eventually at the Carter Library and Museum. What ended up happening is that working together with stakeholders throughout the city of Atlanta and beyond, we went from about 2 or 3 weeks of programming to over 15 months of programming. What we realize is that there is a swell of activity related to Africa in Atlanta. There's a swell of interest. There are people who are doing business and all kinds of things. So we went from basically an art-focused initiative to a globally focused initiative where we were focusing on global affairs, education, health, business, and innovation in addition to the arts and the culture. From all of that activity, which there were many events, we hosted many dignitaries and just had a lot of interesting initiatives. We realized that we didn't really have the opportunity to focus on women, and that's something that we very much wanted to do. Women were a part of many of the things we were doing, but didn't necessarily have the focus and attention that we wanted to give to women. So from our resources and connections and things that we observed through that 15 months with Africa Atlanta, we decided to develop an initiative focused on women entrepreneurs. We held a summit in March earlier this year, and we brought together over 40 people to help us think about what can we do, what's the added advantage of the liberal arts college at Georgia Tech doing something with women entrepreneurs. I think we know that there are tons of programs that exist all over the world. Well, we knew that we had the strong ties to Africa, number one. As a liberal arts college, we bring a human-centered focus to problems, and our motto is that we're at the crossroads of social sciences, technology, and humanity. So with that, that is the approach to the program that we are actually building. We're happy to say that we are actually hosting or convening our pilot program in November 1st through the 4th. We are working with the Mayor's Office of International Affairs and their Women's Entrepreneurship Initiative. So our program will bring together women from that program, and we're also bringing over 20 women entrepreneurs from the continent of Africa. We're focusing on 4 countries, and I say we added a 5th, which is Zambia. But those countries are Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, and Kenya. And we're bringing over clusters of women from those countries. So maybe 3 or 4 who will actually work in cohorts. They'll represent industries including agribusiness, technology, manufacturing, and media and entertainment. And over that 4-day period, we will have an opportunity to connect them with mentors, peer collaborators, look for opportunities for international exchange and trade. And in addition to that, we're hoping to do a slightly different entrepreneurship program. So there will be sessions on finance and legal issues, but another very important session will focus on work-life balance. And not your typical, how do I sit down and find my time for tea, but really delving into issues that women are dealing with. We had the opportunity to work with some of the fellows from the Mandela Washington Fellowship, Young African Leaders. And it's very interesting, I think, when women talk and really get down to the nitty-gritty of what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. I look at the work that I'm doing a lot of ways as a startup. And when I'm at work, I am totally focused. But when I get home to my 6-year-old, she doesn't care what I do. She doesn't care who gets paid, who pays my paycheck. I have very different issues, and I think women typically have that. Whether you have a mate that's participating 1,000%, we're pulled in many different ways, and this is something that we really hope to look at and deal with when we're working with women, because we tend to put ourselves last. Another interesting aspect of this will be the focus on technology and the use of technology to leverage what you're doing. Understanding that we'll be working with entrepreneurs from Africa, the focus will be on the use of mobile technology. What are some of the best apps to do what you need to do, also to look at financing and those types of things. So we plan to follow the women from that point on to a year out, and hopefully have the next group that will go over to the continent of Africa, maybe with another pilot related to this, and eventually grow this program. So again, the first group will come from Africa, but subsequent groups, we are looking to come from Latin America, Middle East, Asia, and other parts of the developing world. And I just want to quickly say again, I know you've heard it, welcome to Atlanta. This is the place of my birth, though I grew up in Savannah, as someone mentioned, and Savannah is a wonderful place. There's lots of arts and crafts, lots to see historically as well as industry-wide, and I think you could not have chosen a better state to come and observe. We have world-class institutions. We all know of Harvard, which is actually the Georgia Tech of the North. And so we welcome you here again, and I'm just open to any questions you have. And also, any suggestions you may have in terms of programs or people who we could collaborate with for what we're doing with women. So thank you again. Are there any questions for Michelle?
So do you take this women from institutions? How do you get referrals on the women to?
That's an excellent question. We realized that we had a time crunch, and so we went to about 3 or 4 different groups, some that are on the African continent. So one is the Lionesses of Africa, another is the Gracia Michelle Trust. Nelson Mandela's widow has an organization. We went to Yali Fellows, and we had gotten some other suggestions of women who could actually send their application into us, and we're actually in the selection process now. So it was not very democratic in the beginning, not very open, and part of the reason is because this being a pilot with some of the constraints that we had, we just did not have the bandwidth to open it up, but we hope to do that with the next classes.
We have presidents of institutions here and directors of institutions, and I'm sure they have women or ladies within their institutions that they would like to refer to your institution in terms of this kind of arrangements and things to do with you guys in terms of collaboration on this kind of events and all of that. Would you be willing to work with them?
Absolutely. I think that the strength of what we're doing is through our partnerships. So I certainly cannot say, I don't care where I've traveled on the African continent, that I know all of the institutions. And so We get our credibility by working directly with institutions and individuals who are on the continent, and that's the best way for us to select candidates. So I'm not certain if the women can make it this round. We actually extended the deadline until next Monday, so if you have someone, I'll give you my information, who can actually submit their information. But this is, again, just the first round, and we see so much potential with this program, and it has gotten a lot of attention. So we're excited about it, and welcome to being connected with more organizations, but also women entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Giselle.
We have time for one more question.
I was that thorough.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Deshawn. I appreciate you always being so warm and interested in working with us. We just have one other, just real quick presentation. I'd like to introduce Steve Van Ginkel and Rex Friedland. Rex is my business partner since for about 3 years now. He believes in my dreams, and sometimes people wonder how am I able to do the things that I do. Well, Rex nicely wrote me a nice chunk a check to help me be the entrepreneur that I am, so thank you, Rex. Rex is also part of aquaponics, and aquaponics, everyone knows obviously that Africa has so many agricultural opportunities, especially Nigeria, and catfish and tilapia is a fish that you all love. So aquaponics is the art of soilless farming, so you can actually raise fish and the vegetables grow from the waste of the fish. And so we won't go into all the science of that. I just like that for Steve Van Ginkel, who is also a scientist and engineer here at Georgia Tech and also a business partner, to share a little bit about who you are and the opportunity to partner with Georgia Tech on aquaponic gardens. Thank you.
My name's Steve Van Ginkel. I'm on the faculty in the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department. I think we are the best school in the country. Don't worry about schools anymore. But I'm 44. I'm at the prime age of doing what I want to do. But yeah, so I started aquaponics. So I got my first bachelor's in fisheries. I got my PhD in environmental engineering. I've always focused on energy, water, and nutrients, nutrient recovery from wastewater. And I think aquaponics is the best way to increase food system resiliency anywhere, especially in urban areas. And like Marjay said, aquaponics is the merger of two mature technologies, aquaculture tied with hydroponics in one-to-one system. And so like what's confused me is why isn't aquaponics a mature industry? And I think we are at the verge of breaking through its glass ceiling and making it a mature industry. You create two products with one resource. The plants clean the water for the fish fertilize the plants. Together it makes for a great system. In our research at Georgia Tech, we're not, we can make the most high-tech system in the world with all kinds of nuts and bolts and sensors and stuff, but it wouldn't be affordable to the masses. So we're trying to research clever ways to make aquaponics affordable to the masses. And the key thing is we want to provide jobs, and we want to cure what's called food deserts. Here in Atlanta, we have 500,000 people who live in a food desert where people don't have access to healthy food, either due to low income, mobility, or availability. And so if we, I participated in the ATDC boot camp 3 years ago. I participated in the Clean Tech Open boot camp 3 years ago. And these guys know what they're doing, and they really helped me develop my process. Even though I'm a researcher and my funding's tied to like government dollars, and there's no entrepreneurship tied to it. In parallel, I'm still trying to push this stuff, so I'm partnering with entrepreneurs. We got 4 systems. Let me jump back a second. So we built a system over next to the Martin Luther King Center. It's a 6,000-gallon system. 3 years ago, I built a system at my own house. It's just a typical, pretty small 300-gallon system, able to produce 300 pounds of fish per year, about 3,000 heads of lettuce, if that's all you want to grow. Much larger systems can produce 3,000 pounds. I mean, within the size of this room, you could produce 3,000 pounds of tilapia and 44,000 heads of lettuce, if that's all you wanted to produce. And so that was 3 years ago. And now we got 4 systems in the works. We got the Georgia Tech campus. I talked to the president, I talked to the vice president of finance, and back in April they said that they were going to donate or put in $50K to build a system on campus. And things are still in the works. The faculty are still meeting. Things in the universities work very slow, and everybody has to be on board before you even do anything. So it's kind of frustrating for me, but I think it's going to happen. And the other 3 systems, I'm partnering with a group of recently homeless Navy veterans who want to bring these people out of the shadows and make them productive members of society again. And that's RAP Farms, Rising Above Poverty Farms. We got a spot over in Blank Park. And the other 2 systems, working with Marietta Middle School. We met once before, and they got a grant for $20K to build a system at their site. We're meeting with them tomorrow. Another one is Grove Park Elementary. They got an $8,000 grant from the Blank Foundation to build a system, and hopefully we'll build a system for them soon for the school. And one thing that these boot camps told me is, what's their value proposition? RAP Farms, they want to feed their community, they want to employ veterans. Schools, they want to educate their children. In food system resiliency, where does your food come from? Is it always, can we depend on going to the supermarket every day and buying these products? Are these products even good for us? Should we have a better alternative, eating fresh produce and fresh fish? And the other thing I'd like to talk about is, 3 years ago I started this algae biodiesel project where me and some colleagues were the lead on the largest Department of Energy grant this decade called the ATP3, or Algae Testbed Public-Private Partnership, where we're trying to harmonize how algae is produced in the United States. So me and 4 other test beds, Cal Poly, Arizona, Ohio, Florida, and Honolulu, we're all growing algae the same way, analyzing the same way. And this is a perfect dovetail for aquaponics because the non-fatty acid portion, the non-biodiesel portion, makes a great fish food. It's algal meal, it's high protein, high carbohydrate. And one little nugget I like to tell everybody is that if we meet future mandates, biofuel mandates, which is 4 billion gallons per year, we'll simultaneously produce 1 fish fillet per American per week. And that's only 1% of our total, less than 1% of our total fuel demand. So if we're serious about fueling ourselves renewably, we'll automatically feed ourselves. So algae is perfect for that.
Could you just, thank you, just share your thoughts on how we can partner with Georgia Tech?
Yeah, we can do a student exchange. Everything that we're doing here at Georgia Tech, everything we're doing here off campus, can easily be replicated anywhere in Nigeria. And I think the key for Nigeria is you want to use indigenous materials. We could, even here in Georgia, we're thinking about buying this turnkey system from Florida, and installing it, and then improving the efficiency of the system. But we don't want to do that forever. We don't want to ship stuff from Florida. We want to use our own materials here. And so there's a million ways to skin this cat, a million ways to do aquaponics. What's the best for Nigeria? What's the fundamentals? What's the indigenous materials that you have to do it? And you can do it the way you want to. And that's the thing with these kits that we're going to build. We're going to empower veterans to grow what they want and to feed who they want. We're not going to tie, them to what they want to do. If I can introduce Paul. I met Paul yesterday. He's a minister in Rwanda. He's interested in the energy, food, water nexus. You want to say something?
My name is Paul Gamba. I'm from the Ministry of Infrastructure.
What's your title again?
The coordinating the program within the Ministry of Infrastructure in energy sector. So I'm here as a scholar working with the Professor Steven. We want to start small programs in the Ministry of Infrastructure.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Definitely we have some vice chancellors from Nigeria. They are president of Nigerian universities. They are very much interested in the program that you have. What will be the initial process to start that off, to establish that relationship in terms of actually setting up prototypes on the ground in Nigeria?
I think, you decide where you want it. You tell me the size that you want. We do some research, find out what materials you have. Maybe we do want to ship 1 kit to your site and then reverse engineer it. And then we want to get some students involved. We have hundreds of students here who are interested in urban farming and aquaponics. And it's just a matter of just communicating and doing small projects and, hey, just
You were
keep going.
talking about using local raw materials for this kind of, for setting up these farms in Nigeria. That would take some feasibility studies, and you on ground in Nigeria. Would you be willing to come to Nigeria to look at the possibilities of actually locally producing and putting these things on ground?
Sure.
There will be one. Yep. What would be the budgetary implication of mini farms? 3,000 tilapia fish, I was going to say to you is a lot. I think for a carton of tilapia fish in Nigeria, pretty big ones, I don't know what size you're talking about but for medium-sized ones, about 16,000 or 17,000 for a carton. And in a carton, you have just 12 of them. So if you take 3,000 divided by 12 and multiply it by 15,000 naira, we're talking about a whole lot of income. A whole lot of income. So what would you say would be the budgetary implication for that kind of production? And what would be our what would be our turnover time? What would be our profit timing and all of that?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I base my work off the work of Dr. Wakosi, because I haven't built his system yet. His system is the University of Virgin Islands system. He's the godfather of aquaponics. And then that's what I proposed for Raft Farms in Marietta. And so I know his system very well. I went to his conference. I worked with him, worked with his PhD students. Just so for a system about this big, about a 30-foot by 60-foot greenhouse. So I mean, Nigeria's pretty warm. You might not even need a greenhouse. So that's here in the United States. That's about 7,000 for a really nice greenhouse. For the aquaponics kit, which you can buy right off the shelf from Pentair Aquatic Ecosystems. So this Pentair company, they're originally in aquaculture. They supply aquaculture farmers with their pumps and blowers and stuff. They took the Wakosi system, who's been doing this for 40 years, and they applied modern environmental engineering technologies for solids removal and stuff like that. That system that will fit in that greenhouse is about 16,000, and that's 3,000 gallons of fish tanks, 86 meters squared of grow area. So that's $16,000 will produce 3,000 pounds of tilapia and 43,000 heads of lettuce. That's bib lettuce. It takes 3 weeks to grow.
Okay.
And yeah, and that's a cheap commodity lettuce. I mean, you can grow whatever you want in these systems. So I think that.
Do you have a program here that we could duplicate in terms of an academic program with these applicable companies?
Yeah,
Definitely. We're more interested in sharing that with that particular area.
Yeah. I was hoping to teach a class this fall. I was hoping to have a prototype built. We were supposed to break ground in August, but things kind of got delayed. So now it's shifted to spring 2016, where the class would just take our prototype, do mass balances on our prototype, figure out the inputs, the outputs, and stuff like that, energy, water, nutrients. And then part of the class would be improving the efficiency. Some really simple ones are using rainwater, using photovoltaics, using efficient ways to heat and aerate the water, and the nutrients. How do you supply the fish food? Do you always buy commercial fish feed, or do you supply algae, or do you take food waste and convert it into insect larvae, which you feed to the fish? So that's what I'm really interested in. I mean, Pentair, they got the system. I want to use clever ways. The students love it. I mean, they love, tinkering with stuff like this, and so that's what I think is reproducible. I mean, we could all work together and figure out how, we can make these systems better, how to make them work on the ground here in Atlanta or there in Nigeria. So that's fun.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's it. We're ready? Yes.
Thank you very much, and I hope to make this interesting for you. You just spent some time at my favorite university here in town, Georgia Tech. The technology that I'm going to be talking to you about, especially the HIV vaccine, is actually from Emory University, which is also here in Atlanta, so I don't know if there have been any representatives from Emory. But I run a small clinical stage biotechnology company here in Atlanta. But what does that mean? That means that since 2001, GeoVax has been working on a version of a HIV vaccine primarily for North America, so it's what's called clade B. So that's the version of HIV that we have in North America and also in Western Europe. Last year, we started using the same basic constructs to make an Ebola vaccine. And I brought with me this morning Dr. Arvind Domi, who's a member of our staff who actually does the design of these vaccines. And where we found ourselves now is GeoVax is now the leading vaccine contender to go to efficacy trial here in North America. So what does that mean, efficacy trial? That means that we've done all the animal studies, we've done all the human safety trials, we've had this vaccine in roughly 500 people. And we're ready to test it now in regions and in parts of cities where people are likely to need protection from HIV. So this is a protective vaccine, like a polio vaccine, smallpox vaccine. The idea here is that you want to protect people who've been vaccinated, so if they come in contact with HIV, they won't come down with HIV, and it won't progress on to AIDS. So let me get right into the specifics. One of the main foci that we have is that it was designed at Emory, but we had collaborations with our own National Institutes of Health and also the Centers for Disease Control. So I think everybody in this room is aware that HIV is a very difficult disease to control. There is no approved vaccine anywhere on the globe for HIV. And there's been many failures in this space. And there's only been one vaccine that was tried in Thailand that gave roughly about 30% protection. But we certainly expect that we're going to far exceed that ability to protect people. Our particular pipeline is focused for North America. With these preventive vaccines, we also just started, we have a grant that we just got recently for Dr. Domi, and that is to do the version of clade C for South Africa. Now, unfortunately, that's not going to help Nigeria. The research that we did looking at the incidence in Nigeria is the versions that you have in your country are called A and G. Those are the primary versions of it. So I'm here today, part of our proposal to discuss, to see if there's interest in wanting to develop a vaccine specifically for the version of HIV that you have in Nigeria. We also have a program, as I mentioned before, we started last year looking at Ebola. And we've already gone through our challenge studies with Ebola. I'll spend a few minutes on that particular subject. We are designing our vaccine to be a second generation. So there's already some initial vaccines that are doing phase 1 trials as a preventive vaccine for Ebola that are under test. And we expect to have our vaccine ready in about 18 months. And our objective then is to correct for some of the mistakes that'll be in the current versions of those vaccines. This is what HIV looks like. It's very sinister looking virus, and it's the surface proteins. These proteins on the surface that virus uses in order to be able to attach itself to cells and actually infect other cells. And so one of the things about our technology is that we create what are called virus-like particles. So what we try to do is train your immune system by creating antibodies that are going to attach to the surface. So I just want to show you this cartoon. This is a virus-like particle. It's a dwarf sphere. We create these using our vaccine, and the surface protein that is here is very similar to the surface protein that's on the real virus. And so when you inject somebody with a vaccine and they create these virus-like particles, you train the immune system to create these antibodies that then will stay long-term with the individual. And the minute that that person or that individual sees HIV, these antibodies will attach themselves to the surface, block its ability to infect, and by doing so, it prevents people from coming down with the disease. So So that is the concept that we have behind our vaccine. Now, I don't have to tell you that there's roughly 34 million people around the globe that are infected, and there's various versions of it. You see again, North America, part of South America are clade B. Clade C is primarily sub-Saharan, and you have a different version in Nigeria. And there's other versions. There's probably 9 major subgroups of HIV. And because these groups are distinct from one another, that's why to be effective, it's better to have a vaccine that's very specific for that version of the virus. Because I think everybody's heard that HIV changes, it morphs, it moves into something else, but it does so sort of within families. And then when it escapes the particular confines of a family, then it becomes a separate clade. So there's roughly about 9 of those around the globe. Now here are the sobering statistics for Nigeria, and something that you're aware of, that there are roughly 3 million individuals living with HIV in Nigeria, and then you have roughly that equates to about the world's 10% population. 10% of the people infected with HIV live in Nigeria, and so it has worldwide about the second highest number of infections. So without a doubt, this is an issue, and I don't know how much other efforts either your government or your universities are doing to come up with a vaccine for Nigeria. But one of the reasons why I'm here is to say that we have the tools to make a vaccine specifically for your country. In our particular, for us here in North America, the way that we are going to get our vaccine into these clinical trials, there's 2 ways of doing it. We do it, one way would be to wait for the National Institutes of Health to help us with the funding that we need in order to be able to pay for a 3,000 individual, 3,000 patient trial to do this. Or what we're doing next week is we're actually going out to places in New York to seek foundation support so that we can do what's this efficacy trial, this pivotal trial that I was speaking about, to vaccinate people who are at risk with coming down with HIV. So we have already started that effort. And then, as I mentioned before, our early animal studies with Dr. Domi's version for South Africa, those studies will start this fall. We have the funding in order to be able to do that. This is our animal data. This is what we use. We do what's called challenge studies. We have 2 groups of animals. These are the non-human primates, so they're monkeys. The black line are the monkeys that do not get the vaccine, and the blue line are the monkeys that do have the vaccine. And then once a week, they receive challenge doses of the virus. This is a monkey version of the HIV virus. And you can see that the control group, which is the black line, become infected very quickly. With one vaccination of the virus, 50% of that control group become infected. And then it's the difference between the 2 curves that show that you've got significant difference, significant safety generated by the fact that some animals have been vaccinated. And so that is the animal proof that goes along with our clinical data, which is shown here. And the only other company or vaccine product that we can compare, how do we compare to another vaccine for HIV, is the Sanofi-Aventis product that did do a phase 3 trial. This trial was done in Thailand. And the problem with that particular vaccine is that it didn't last very long. Those of us who are in the vaccine world understand that there are a lot of variables between vaccines. Those of you who were in the States this past year who had the flu shot noticed that for older people, the flu shot was less than 20% effective, which means that it didn't get very much protection at all. So every year they're different. So vaccines have issues. The problem is durability. And this particular one, at the end of 6 months, it really didn't have very much effectiveness anymore. And so when you compare these are all indicators for the immune system of what we use in our field, in our HIV field, in immunology, to compare one vaccine versus another. And each one of these categories, our version of the vaccine exceeds what another company was able to do, and despite this, having a mediocre vaccine, they were still able to get 30% protection. So that means that if everybody in this room was exposed to HIV and you were vaccinated, 30% of you would have some kind of protection. So it wouldn't be 100%, but about 30%. Our goal is to get over 50%. So the problem with this particular vaccine, because it didn't last very long, that vaccine is being redesigned and being redone for places again like South Africa. So one of the things that mentioned to the organizers of this group is that if there was a serious interest in wanting to develop a vaccine specifically for Nigeria, it would have to contain those clades A and G. It would take us about 3 years to design a vaccine, and the cost is about $15 million to be able to do that. And I don't propose that this group has that kind of money to be able to pay for it. But what I'm saying is that if there was an interest in collaborating between our company and maybe obviously some universities and the health ministers within Nigeria to go to the Gates Foundation, Wellcome Trust, or any number of other places to put a proposal together to see if one could come up with the money that would be required to develop the vaccine. So keep in mind, the particular design that we have now is the one for North America that is going to go to pivotal trial. And what we're saying is we'll use those same ideas that Dr. Domi has designed in our vaccine for North America. We translate those ideas to the version that would be required for Nigeria. So that was my purpose in being here today, to just let you know that if nobody else is paying attention to Nigeria and HIV, and you're interested in having a vaccine specifically for your country, that's something that we could discuss. And then just very briefly, just talk about Ebola. It's a very sinister looking virus. Everybody knows about the ravages of Ebola. And again, there are certain advantages of being a second generation product. One, the vector that we intend to use is the same vector we use for HIV. It's this modified vaccinia CAR, which used to be used for smallpox vaccinations. We know that it gives good immunology, which means it stimulates your immune system to protect you, because we can do these virus-like particles again. It's long-lasting, and it's not really affected by pre-existing conditions. And so we don't know how some of the World Health Organizations are going to handle Ebola, whether or not they're going to stockpile or wait for the next outbreak. Our particular timetable for our version, again, is at about early 2017, and we'll have the Zaire version of it. So our particular goal is to have a vaccine for all 3 major strains of Ebola, plus Marburg disease, which is another one of the filoviruses, and potentially one other vaccine, or one other virus. But the first version ready for early part of 2017 will be a second generation Zaire version. This is what our data looks like that we received just last week. We're in the animal challenge phase, which means that we use guinea pigs are the model for this. And you can see the red line are the vaccinated guinea pigs. Blue line are the ones that just had our MVA, our vaccine vector, without any of the protection in it. And then the black line are the controls. So the control animals all came down with Ebola, and the vaccinated animals, 100% of those animals survived. So what we're doing now is we're going directly into the non-human primate studies. We'll do that this fall. We're looking to find collaborators in the U.S. To build the vaccine itself, to manufacture the vaccine, and then we expect that it's going to take us until early 2017 to have the first versions of the second generation of polio vaccine available. So that's another project that if somebody was interested in wanting to bring a new generation of polio vaccine to your country, it's something that we can talk about. And so I'm just going to leave with this. These are our collaborations. It's the Emory University here in town, where we've got some of the original constructs, the National Institutes of Health, and of course we do a lot with the HIV vaccine trials network, which run the clinical trials in this particular country. And so I just wanted to make a brief introduction, see if we can stimulate some interest. Those of you who might have an interest in wanting to build a collaboration, we'll be around after this to be able to take some of your questions or sit and talk face to face. So is there time for questions right now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
I have a question. What will be the procedure that will be required for this institution to collaborate with your company in order to either be involved in the research itself, especially extending to Nigeria? What will be the steps?
Yeah, well, the first step is to see if there's some enthusiasm, to investigate whether or not there's others within Nigeria that are also doing vaccine work. Assuming that there's not a lot of progress being made and somebody's serious about it, then we would sign a collaboration agreement to work together to make that happen. And then it would be, to get the funding from this, especially with people like the Gates Foundation, it's much better to come from the people within the country. And so I think what would be required is then a proposal would be put together to say, all right, what is GeoVax intending to do here for the people of Nigeria? And you put this dossier together that the Nigerians would use to approach people like the Wellcome Trust or the Gates Foundation to see if there's some funding that could be made available to make this happen.
I can tell you this, I would like to move to that collaboration because University of Jos, University of Lagos, and University of Ibadan are very interested in this kind of project based on our initial contact with them. So I'm sure they will like to explore that possibility.
All right, maybe we can talk after this.
What specific institutions would you be looking at apart from universities? Ministry of Health?
Well, I'll be honest with you. We're not that familiar with Nigeria and how the system gets done there. I imagine the health ministries would be involved. You need the research institutions to be
those universities I just
enthusiastic.
mentioned are medical universities, and they do a lot of research related to medicine, medical health.
And so I think from our standpoint, we would leave it to either this group or the King Foundation or whomever you like to communicate with to kind of decide, all right, who are going to lead this effort if you're really serious about wanting to do it. And I don't think that's our choice because, this is the first introduction that we have, but people who know how to get things done in Nigeria and what government agencies need to be involved, those are the ones who probably should take the lead. That's a good question. Yes?
Yes, I was start from this premise that prevention is better than cure. But in spite of that, I would like to find out why your concentration is on prevention rather than cure. Those who have been infected, are they condemned? Is there no hope?
I'm sympathetic. The question has to do with why are we doing a prevention and not concentrating on a cure. First of all, a cure is very, very difficult. Okay, we've tried that and not had any success. Nobody else has had success either. That's a much longer term project. But if you can prevent new infections from happening, at least now you stop the tide of more infections from occurring. So you have to start somewhere. That's something that we think is doable, is to have a prevention. And eventually somebody will figure out a way for a cure. Yes, ma'am.
On the academic side, I know that my university, as Dr. Bata said, has been working on HIV, AIDS, and but in terms of
having the environment to carry out, the trying out these things, or how does the academic benefit from that in terms of being part of research
Yeah, I
and
understand.
building research capacity?
The question has to do with what's the benefit from the academic institution standpoint. A lot of times it can come down to some of the testing. Dr. Domi, maybe Arvind, you'd help me out here. Are there aspects of after the vectors have been designed, some of the testing, and certainly some of the animal trials? I don't know if you have, primate facilities that can do some of the testing of the vaccine itself, take the data and do the analytics. That's certainly something that has to be done somewhere. The actual design of the vaccine takes a skill set that we have internal, but after it's been designed, all these different testing protocols, some of that could be transferred to some of the universities. So we'd have to sit down and discuss, okay, at what stage could some of the testing actually go to the university to let them have a role to play. Arvind, do you have something you...
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we're open and we have to sit down and discuss what's the possibilities over there and how we can help and collaborate, not only to go through this project, but to help the local universities over there with knowledge and other connection from US.
Any other questions? If not, then Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Hopefully we'll find a way to collaborate.
Thank you very much. Give him another hand for his presentation. So now we'll take this time to break for lunch.
Yes, and before that, could you remind everyone to please fill out the evaluation of the program? It's very important to get feedback from you. Okay?
Please fill out the evaluation of the program. Okay, so let's break for lunch and be back here in an hour. Is that correct? All right, thank you so much. Same place as breakfast for lunch.
And lunch is ready and served. And lunch is already served.
You don't have the forms I have. Thank you. Bring it. For yesterday. This is for yesterday. Yes, sir. Thank you. If you don't have the forms, the form you are filling is for yesterday. I gave you two. They gave you two. I gave you two. Yes, I Yes. I want you to finish with yes, the one for yesterday. We are going to give the ones for today also. Did you fill the one for Monday? I can give you one for this. I'll collect the ones for Monday. I'll collect everything if you haven't given it to me.
For lunch. For those that don't know, I am Margie Etheridge. I'm on the board of the A.D. King Foundation, and I am the CEO of a company called BACSAC International. And BACSAC is an acronym for BA Corporate Kid, Support a Corporate Kid. So this particular section of the program will focus on women's empowerment. And we're going to start with a good friend of mine, Matilda Auer, and I'm going to read her bio off my phone. Matilda will focus primarily on women building international partnerships around education. Matilda Arwen was born and raised in Ghana, completed her education in executive business management with Swiss Federal Brand Accreditation at Feist Homentanium, Switzerland, with a background in banking, accounting, and IT. She is a performance-driven, forward-thinking, multilingual business operations executive with far-reaching expertise in all facets of leading profitable markets. Through innovative team development, superior business relations, and marketing expertise in the United States, she has proven herself adept at achieving bottom-line results while formulating and implementing advanced business solutions to meet a diverse set of needs. And it goes on and on. She's an amazing individual. She's an entrepreneur. Needless to say, Matilda, give her a hand as she comes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. And I know that oftentimes around or after lunch, it's the hardest time for me. I don't know about yes, I don't know about you, but I tend to kind of want to fall asleep after lunch, especially if I had anything to do with carbohydrates. But thank you, Margie. Thank you, Dr. Bob, for putting this together. Like Margie said, my focus has been international. Even though I was born and halfway raised in Ghana, my dream is not only on Ghana or focused on Ghana, focus more on Africa, Sub-Saharan. So you can call me Yasatua or Kwame Nkrumah. That's what a lot of people kind of refer to me, because my focus is, if it's good for Ghana, it is good for Nigeria. Yes, Nigeria is 170 million plus, Ghana is 25 million. What can be done in Nigeria can be done in Ghana. So I am here and honored to present to you some of the opportunities and ways for the women to expand their horizons internationally. I've been dealing with a lot of businesses and women entrepreneurs lately, and what I found out from both sides of the aisle is most of the women entrepreneurs in Africa are not prepared. It's not that they're not doing the right thing, they are, but they are not prepared, because we really tend to think small and locally, which is a great thing. But in today's century, to be able to be a global entrepreneur, you have to learn to think like an innovative startup, but then operate like an enterprise. If you can find a way to always present yourself as an enterprise, but still think baby steps in your business, it is possible for you to be able to find the right partners. Because when I go to Switzerland and I'm talking to the entrepreneurs, they want to connect with the women businesses over there in Africa, but they don't know how, because there's no bridge, there's no relationship, and we don't have the right business plan. And also, so the companies here, for example, last week, I was talking to a company. There was a project in Ghana, and he wanted a summary business profile. The company in Ghana, it's a multi-million-dollar company. I called her and I said, I need your profile. He said, I'll need about 2 weeks to put that together. And I said, this is something that should have been ready for a business that is here, ready to shake hands with you. You should have a business profile at all times. So we have to start thinking bigger than we are used to, because you know how it is over in Africa. Nobody's asking us for our financials. Nobody's asking us for our profile, so we don't have that ready. But for us to be ready to be able to go global with everything we do, we have to prepare and have all those things in place. So when I say think big and grow into big enterprise, that's what I mean. Know your partner, your client country. Every country has different business culture. You know, US has different business culture, Switzerland has, Asia has different business, in Africa we have different business culture. So we have to find a way to invest in that research to be able to find out, if I want to do shea butter in China, I want to know what China is looking for, what kind of packaging there is acceptable, so that I can carve my market towards the Chinese market. If it is Switzerland, they're very green. So I have to know that if I'm going to do packaging to Switzerland, maybe my packaging should be in a biodegradable container. That is how you find your partner ready to shake hands with you, because you might bring the container that is not biodegradable and they're not interested in that kind of business. So we have to start doing market research. And market research, we can use students at the educational center. We can show them how to do market research. Market research was very extensive prior to having cell phones and all that. Right now it's very simple. You can go on your computer, you can use your cell phone to do research in a country specific, so that you'll be able to find your partner on ground. And as previously mentioned, there has to be a roadmap. If you are a business, you have to have a roadmap. Where am I going in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? That is something that we tend not to do. But because I'm from both continents, I do understand and I can translate it to the companies here that if you have a company doing business, doesn't necessarily mean that they're not doing the right business. They just don't have the proper paperwork in place, the business development, the roadmap, the branding. So I teach branding also, so we need to focus on branding. So if I say I do shea butter, you have 10 companies doing shea butter in Nigeria. How can a company find you and realize that you are the company that they need to connect with? Branding, you have to brand yourself in a way that it is easier for you to be identified by your partner so that you'll be able to find the right, and then marketing, that is something that we also don't pay attention to in Africa. We have to focus and invest in marketing. It is very, very important. I tend to go back to shea butter because last year I was right here doing a presentation on shea butter. There's a company here in New York, this is a $4 million a year shea butter company. They spend $1.2 million in marketing. And this guy does not even touch the shea butter. He sits in an office and connects the buyers and the sellers. But where he puts his money is the marketing. So it is very important that when we build our roadmap, the business roadmap, that we also invest in marketing and branding. And then as we do branding, we have to have also consistency. You have shea butter in one place coming, and then you have another quality coming. So if we invest in marketing and branding, we tend to have a consistency because the market on this side of the world is always looking for consistency. Let's say I ship every month. Make sure that on the 30th, I do have my shipment ready. Because the companies here, like when you go to Walmart, you saw Walmart, everything is there. You would think that they stock it every 2 minutes. But they do have the partners that they do have, they work with. They bring them the product at certain time. They know when to put it on the shelf and they know when to get new ones. So that is something that is lacking on the continent. So I'm hoping that the university will be able to teach all these classes to show companies, the women in businesses, how to basically stay consistent and how to follow up with clients after. Now, as I was talking about roadmap, going back a little bit, it's a very simple concept. We make it sound very complicated when we say make a business plan. If I am going from one place to the other and I don't have a GPS, I get lost a lot before I get there. But once you have a roadmap, let's say you commit yourself to 1 year plan, and then within the 1 year, you put in what you want to see in 1 year. It could be just finding out where your market is, or it could be finding out where the money is for you to kind of expand. So when you set those goals, it is easy then to fill in. It's very simple baby steps, but it is doable and it's very successful for other companies that have followed the simple roadmap business plan. And talking about branding, yes. If I have, let's say, cashews that I want to export. Cashew is coming from a certain state in Nigeria. You can tell a story about the cashew, where it's coming from, to your brand. It's so simple. So like I said, I teach children literally to do branding. When you teach or you do your project around telling a story from where you come from and then expanding it to the global market where your interest is, it is very easy for people or companies to remember who you are and then for them to be able to reach out to you because the world is a global village, but still it's an expansive world. So to find your partner, you have to identify yourself with something for your partner to be able to find you. And invest research and marketing. That is very important. That's chaotic, but they have people on the other side or both sides of the aisle that can assist you in doing your market research. Marjorie is definitely one of them. Doing your market research so that you find the right partners to expand your business so that you can also be what it is that you want to be. And consistency, like I said, is the key to success. And when you are ready to go international, the first thing is, who is your target client, partner? What does your partner want? How does your partner want it, and when does your partner want it? If you follow these 3 steps, you definitely on to a successful business. And I wanted to also share something with you. There is a website called SMEtoolkit.org, and they do have a specific section for Nigeria. It talks about all these other things and more in terms of how to, and this is actually a relationship between IFC and IBM. So if there's any platform that needs to be built, a small tool that needs to be built, IBM can come in and assist small businesses in terms of what to do. So probably would suggest to the chancellors if they are interested to connect with IBM, because IBM can assist them in building or helping the student build smaller applications that you can use to start up or to grow your business. So thank you very much for having me today. If you have any questions, I am here to answer any questions.
Any questions for Matilda? Thank you, Matilda. Okay, thanks again, Matilda, for taking the time to come out on your busy day. Let's give her a hand again. Appreciate that information about marketing and branding. I'm a marketing person, so I definitely support that. If no one knows about your business, how can they support your services or buy your products? The next person or speaker that we'll have, she's an amazing person, and I'm going to read her bio, and please forgive me if I mispronounce your name. Chief Yua Osamiri. She is the president and chancellor of the African Continental University. She is also the president and founder of the African Women Economic Consortium, also known as AWEC. Dr. Osamiri was an official delegate to the United Nations-sponsored World Council of Religions for Peace, its first Africa's most senior religious leadership conference on HIV/AIDS and orphaned children, held in Nairobi, Kenya on June 9 through 12, 2002. An ambassador for peace, she has participated at the International Leadership Conference sponsored by the Federation for World Peace in Washington, Hawaii, and Virginia. She is instrumental for initiating the AWEC Village of Hope project, a renewable energy housing initiative to affect the care of displaced women and African orphans. Today she'll be speaking to us primarily about utilizing grants to sponsor your projects, and she'll be talking about her Village of Hope. Give her a hand as she comes up. Are you going to be using your CD first? No, let's put you on. Okay.
Ndewo. Ndewo is an Igbo Nigerian word that means hello, but it also has a deeper meaning. And that is Ndo. It will long life to all of you. And that is what I hope and pray for each and every one of you gathered here today underneath the sound of my voice. Thank you so very much for having me here. I would like to thank the organizers of this auspicious occasion for inviting me to be here. Marjay, thank you very much, and Dr. Babs as well. When I was asked to come and speak, I wondered what would be the most significant aspect of what I must speak on. And so please forgive me, I may speak in frank and uncomfortable terms. But I'd like to ask you to allow the milk of human kindness to flow through you, so you treat me with kindness. Because some of what I have to say need to be heard before I actually go into my presentation. There is an Igbo proverb, and it says, "War onwo de gopa." For those of you who are Igbo, you understand what you're saying. You do, don't you? War onwo de gopa. That means that if there is something wrong with your leg that's causing the flies to fly around it, find what the problem is first. Because when you can cure the sore, the flies will go away. The most powerful tool in the hands of an oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. Let me say that again. The most powerful tool in the hands of an oppressor is the mind of the oppressed, not your house, not your car, not your wealth, but your mind. Because the mind is a powerful tool, and if it's not used correctly, it can handicap you. Stephen Biko said this to the young South Africans: the most powerful tool in the hands of an oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. Why do I say this? Because a tool is something that you use to build or to destroy. And if we're asking people to become entrepreneurs, we have to feed their minds as well. We have to prepare them and give them what they need to become entrepreneurs. So some of the tools that I want to talk about before I actually get into how I became an entrepreneur. The tools that cause Nigerians to struggle as we go through this whole new scheme of becoming entrepreneurs. First of all, let's talk about the tool, the destructive tool of ethnocentrism. We have a lot of individuals that are doing exceptional things, but some of us will not support them because they are not from our village, because they are not from our tribe. And so you can be as creative as you want to be, but you need support. So part of what we must do as universities, encouraging our participants at the university to understand just because it doesn't come from your neck of the woods doesn't mean you don't support it. So ethnocentrism is one thing that we must address. The second thing we must address is obviously lack of support. So we have all these individuals come up with all these exciting programs, but they don't have the support. They don't have the opportunity. Sometimes we wonder, something like Boko Haram, we think these are just foolish people. Some of them in their ranks, they have educated people who can't do anything with their education. So lack of opportunity becomes a problem, it becomes a destructive tool. And quite frankly, Nigeria is suffering right now from brain drain because there are lack of opportunities for a lot of creative people. So we must provide opportunity for them. The other tool that we must address is corruption. Well, needless to say, corruption is all over the world. In America, it's called lobbying, right? But it's the same thing. But corruption makes it difficult for you to move from point A to point B because you have to bribe different people to get to where you have to be. So it's important that we understand it is not that Nigeria doesn't have what it takes, but there are these tools that stand in the way, and they must also be addressed as we are moving through the process of encouraging entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship started for me when I was a child, thanks to my father. My father had 10 children, so you can imagine he had to give that many kids attention. But I was a very, very precocious child, and he wanted to make sure that I stayed that way. So my dad would wake me up very early in the morning, about 5 a.m. in the morning, he would ask me to come to the backyard and sit with him. His name is Chief K.O.K. Onyoha, who has joined the ancestors. But he would ask me to come outside and watch the sun rise. I never quite understood that, what that meant, but it was exciting for me because I was sitting with my father. How can you imagine that? For all these other children, I had the opportunity every morning to sit and watch the sunrise. Finally, he told me why he made me do that. He said, I want to tell you that which is greater than you. The most powerful thing greater than you is the sun. And that's the only thing that can stand in your way. So that means you can achieve whatever you want to achieve. You don't have the right to die until you've made a difference and never live anywhere unknown. Entrepreneurship was born in me at that particular time. But it showed its face. What made it possible for me to be an entrepreneur was when I traveled to Nairobi, Kenya. I had the opportunity to go as a delegate of the United Nations World Council of Religions for World Peace. That was their first international conference on HIV/AIDS and its impact on orphan children. There I had the opportunity to meet